The original idea for the seventh Halloween film began as the second half of the treatment written by Daniel Farrens during pre-production of Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, which he later submitted as a new treatment entitled Michael Myers: Lord of the Dead. The story would have opened immediately after the events of the previous film and involved Tommy Doyle discovering that the entire town of Haddonfield was involved in a conspiracy to control Michael Myers. Another idea pitched after the Farrens treatment was Halloween 7: Two Faces of Evil, written by Robert Zapaya. Originally intended to be a direct-to-video film, this would have involved Michael Myers stalking an all-women's boarding school. The plot eventually also revealed a copycat killer, causing many fans to compare such a twist to The Silence of the Lambs. The pitch itself was changed a couple of times, changing the title to Halloween: Blood Ties as they brought Laurie Strode into the storyline, before scrapping the idea entirely. The actual screenplay was based on a story by Kevin Williamson, with the original working title for the film being Halloween 7: The Revenge of Laurie Strode, for what would actually become the 1998 film Halloween H2O, 20 years later.
Molly, please. Do you have any thoughts on Victor and Elizabeth?
Well, I think that Victor should have confronted the monster sooner. I mean, he's completely responsible for Elizabeth's death. He was so paralyzed by fear that he never did anything. It took death for the guy to get a clue.
And why do you think he was finally able to confront his monster?
Well, I think that Victor had reached a point in his life where he had nothing left to lose. I mean, the monster saw to that by killing off everybody that he loved. Victor finally had to face it. It was about redemption. It was his fate.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. Connor here along with Chris, and as we hit this episode, we're just a little bit over 50% of our way through the Halloween franchise, and this is a film that I liked a lot as a kid. One of the ones I haven't watched in a really long time, and I mean it this one bounced off of the success of Scream and kind of the re-uproar of the horror film of the late 90s. Today we're looking at Halloween H2O 20 years later. So Chris, I believe you said you hadn't watched this in a while as well. So what was your takeaway on the rewatch for the episode?
Yeah, so it had been a very long while since I'd watched any of these, and it's better in some ways than you remembered, and then it's kind of it shows signs of exactly when it was made in other ways. You know, you can very much tell. You know, it's funny enough that in '95, the sort of bad performance of Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, was kind of perceived as like the death of the slasher genre, but then in '96 Scream came out and seemed to revitalize the slasher genre overnight. And then by '98 you have a Halloween movie trying to kind of go off the model of Scream and finding success doing it. So it's like, I like the idea of sort of wiping the slate clean and trying to say like, hey, the storyline got a little off the rails. We're kind of into some wild corners, and can we just go back to basics of like a killer going after people and just like surviving and kind of just like a more traditional kind of thrills. And so I like the idea of that, but you can very much tell that it's in this more the mold of Scream, which was like, oh, make the kids really, really likable, make it like kind of like the audience is really actively not rooting for them to die and is kind of wanting them to make it, you know, make it a little bit more of like a sincere kind of a movie, you know, and not just like, oh, well, we're just here for the death and destruction and the kills, you know. So you can see that there's a little bit of that going on. You can kind of appreciate it. It kind of it's like a slower kind of more drama movie than I remembered. There's a lot of fake out scares through the first like 2/3 of this thing. and then it doesn't really get going until pretty late in the game, and it's kind of surprising how like low key it is in that regard. But it's like, but it feels like a real like it doesn't feel like one of those like a cheap phoned in slasher movie. It feels like a real kind of studio movie that's like legit aiming to be like an A movie, and so there's good and bad about that. But I dug it on the rewatch. It's got flaws, but I dug it. I've always had a preference for this, or a soft spot for this one, because that late 90s era where there were a lot of rented VHS tapes at aunts and uncles' houses and from my parents and stuff. So that's how I kind of saw Scream, Scream 2, Bride of Chucky, Halloween H2O, that 96 to 99 kind of era, Deep Blue Seas in there, of like these horror slasher movies are very, The Faculty, they're very like, they're kind of special to me. They're like a really like important kind of like core memory to me.
And I was gonna go right off of pretty much what you said. Is I like that they wiped the slate clean. I liked. I was excited to kind of like take another look at the Jamie Lee Curtis originally coming back to the Halloween franchise. I know she comes back a little later on, and like it plays out as two different characters and portrayals of her coming back to the franchise. So I was excited to go back and look at this one because I'm very fond of the 2018 film for Halloween. So I didn't 100% remember like what and how her portrayal was in this film, and I like that they kind of, like you said, wipe the slate clean. We kind of erase the sequels, like the Halloween 3 was its own thing, but 4, 5, and 6 for the Halloween franchise, like Jamie Lloyd and all that, the Curse of Thorn, like that's nowhere to be found in this, and kind of just we're starting fresh. And it was nice to get Jamie Lee Curtis back. I think she did a wonderful job in this. And I think this is, if I'm not wrong, clearly I can't remember 100%, but this is one of the first Halloween films I seen. I think I seen them
I,
out of order.
Yeah, I believe this was the first one that I ever saw in any kind of proper setting outside of like, oh, this bit's on TV, that's bit's on TV. I know I've talked about how like the kind of final stretch of number 6 is like a very far back memory for me, as far as like one of the earliest moments where they're like shooting him through the bars and then hitting him with the lead pipe. Like that's a very earliest like Michael memories that I can remember. But then like this is, as far as like watching it beginning to end, like this is the first one that I kind of watched and understood to any degree from beginning to end.
See, if I remember right, I think I seen 1, 2, and then this one, and then a little later on, I found out because like I didn't know if this was the actual like true sequel to Halloween 2, and then like once I started going to the movie store a little more, and that I seen, okay, Halloween 3, 4, 5, Curse of Michael Myers. So I was like, all right. So I started like from the beginning and like watched them in a row and seen like the different storylines and stuff. And as a young kid, I didn't care. The continuity didn't bother me. I didn't, at 6, 7 years old, I didn't know what any of that was, didn't care. And I just came for the movies to enjoy Michael Myers and, seeing some cool deaths and things like that. But this is one of the
Yeah,
ones that
I cared more the older I got about those sort of things.
I will definitely agree with that.
The more I would rewatch the movies, the more I would just like, well, that really doesn't make sense, and they don't really explain that, and why doesn't that add up? I'm a child of like the Star Wars prequels and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where everything was kind of like it felt pretty lined up and locked in as far as continuity goes, especially with the 3 Lord of the Rings movies. So whenever there were things that like weren't consistent, characters being recast or references to the timeline or ages of characters that didn't add up or continuity this, continuity that, like it set me off. I've rambled about this before, but it always set me off as a kid growing up. And horror movie franchises are notorious for their, their non-continuity sometimes.
And I agree with that. As I got older, things in the franchise definitely bugged me like more and more. But I've learned to live with it for now. But it's one of those things that like Halloween H2O is, even when I was younger, I didn't watch it a lot. I watched it a couple times, and like I said, like the original Halloween and like Halloween 4, Halloween 5, like those middle of the row, like the middle of the pack sequels for this franchise were the ones I always went back to. And Halloween H2O was something that I never really went back to as a teenager unless
Oh man.
it was on TV, and I hadn't really watched it recently until for the podcast, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, once we get to our rankings, I might get praise for where I put it, or I might get some hate mail. So we'll see once that episode comes. But
Yeah, and
it is a fun film. It's quick. I think it's the shortest in the franchise at like almost like 80 minutes flat or something like that without credits.
yeah, and I can tell you, I certainly like the last 20 or so minutes when I was a kid and I had this on DVD. When or at least when I was a kid, I would always watch like the final fight between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin in the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. You'd watch the fight scenes over and over again. You'd go to the big battle in Lord of the Rings. Like these were movies where it's like I wouldn't all the time watch the whole movies, but I'd watch the fight scenes or the action scenes and stuff like this. And for this movie, I remember all the time I would just go to the end of the movie where she gets the axe and goes to fight Michael, and I would just watch like the end of the rest of the movie from that point, like the last 20 minutes. And I still, like, even many years later rewatching this, like I get to that part in the movie and it's like, man, all of this is like so embedded in my memory. It still feels so familiar because I watched it so often when I was so young.
Yeah, and I remembered a lot of this movie, but it's just I hadn't seen it in so long that there were definitely certain parts that it was a nice refresher, and I had a good time watching it. And like I said, I love pretty much all the films in this franchise. They, especially the earlier ones that I watched as a kid, they hold like a special place. And this being one of the first ones I seen, it'll always be like a fun and fond memory to go back to. Like I said, it still might not be one of the ones I always watch now. It is, like you said, it is a little slower. It is a little kind of like more tension filled with some jump scares here and there. But all in all, I mean, it's a fun Halloween film. It's a good return to form with Jamie Lee Curtis coming back and things like that. So I mean, it'll be a fun conversation to continue once we get into more of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It made me realize how often, there were some lines and dialogue and scenes from the movie that I remembered from when I was very young and I've always known. But then it made me realize that, like, when you're a young kid and stuff is like flying over your head, or if it's dialogue that's not really interesting or engaging or clicking with you, how much you just kind of like white noise it all. Like there was so much dialogue between the younger characters, the kids in this movie, that it's like I've seen this movie a million times, but like some of it was like, have I ever paid attention to this dialogue when I was a kid? Like, was this stuff just washing over me and I wasn't really registering it? I remembered a lot of Jamie's lines and a lot of her dialogue exchanges and her backstory and stuff, but it's like a lot of the banter with the teens. I was like, was I just like tuning that stuff out as a kid, I suppose, So it was interesting to see again.
Are those things that we will mention later, or is that like the banter between the teenagers, or is that something I can ask you, like what lines were those now?
Just like a lot of like the more like the sort of like dirtier, like the little like the dirty banter with like the two couples, and like when they're just like chit chatting about like getting it on, or eating and turning into pigs, or whatever, and like and all that other kind of nonsense, like when the girls are talking about like they're gonna go out and like roofie guys or something like that, like the whole like date rape thing or whatever. Like I'm like so much of that dialogue was just like in one ear and out the other to me when I was a kid. Like I guess like when you just, I don't know, it was just interesting to hear it again.
Okay, I didn't want to spoil anything if there were like some
No,
favorite lines or anything. So.
no, nothing like that. Nothing like that. No.
All right, well, let me give you some background information on Halloween H2O for you real quick. Halloween H2O 20 Years Later is a 1998 American slasher film directed by Steve Miner and starring Jamie Lee Curtis, LL Cool J, Adam Arkin, Michelle Williams, Janet Leigh, and Josh Hartnett in his film debut. It is the seventh installment in the Halloween franchise. Halloween H2O is a direct sequel to 1978's Halloween and 1981's Halloween 2, ignoring the Jamie Lloyd story arc of the previous three installments. It follows a post-traumatic Laurie Strode who has faked her death in order to go into hiding from her murderous brother, Michael Myers, who finds her working at a private boarding school in California. Halloween H2O was released in the United States on August 5th, 1998, and the film received mixed reviews from critics with many saying it was at that point the best of the sequels, but still paled compared to the original. But it did well at the box office, making it the highest grossing film in the franchise until the release of the 2018 film. A sequel was released 4 years later in 2002 titled Halloween Resurrection. So there is a little background on Halloween H2O.
Yeah, and I would say that I believe I read once that at some point in the creative process, someone involved was lobbying a little bit for it to be a direct continuation from just the original. And I'll go ahead and say now that I actually think that this film would have been a little bit stronger if it had just been a sequel directly to the original, in terms of like the end of the first movie, and then this is 20 years after that, where Michael just sort of was shot, got away, because the whole like there's the scene, where he's like, you watched him burn, and she's like, I didn't exactly see the ashes, and it's like, it's like it's canon that Halloween 2 happened and that he was set on fire, but he's in this movie with no burn scars or damage of any kind, and it feels like that's one of those aesthetic things where it's like they didn't want, this was designed for like a new generation of viewers or an unfamiliar generation of viewers that had the most like surface level awareness of Halloween. Like it's designed for people that's like kind of had only seen the original. Like it's not really designed for the people paying attention to the continuity. So they didn't want him walking around with burns all over him, because then the unaware people in the audience would be like, why are his hands burned? Why has he got burns? And things like that. And so it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I wish they kind of would have just made it a little neater and had it been a follow-up where only the original was canon. They still probably could have used like the lore and backstory that their brother and sister, like that still could have been part of this reality. But I think it maybe would have been a little smoother if they just left 2 out as well. But, that's a story for another day, I guess.
Well, I had heard that too, and that got me thinking, like, okay, like how would they do this? Like he's shot, he gets away, and you could still put Lori, like you could still put her into hiding to like say like, you never know, just in case this guy came back for me, like who, you never know. And
Yeah.
you eliminate the brother arc. So like in this one, like they make it a point that he's coming after her because she's his sister. And like you could do something different if you eliminate the second film to where this is a madman, an absolute psychopath stalking the one that got away.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
Indeed.
I kind of like that route as well.
Yeah, it could work, because I mean that's part of it in terms of like the functions of the way this movie plays out is kind of inconsequential. Like Michael doesn't really have that much of a motive anyway, so it's like, oh, it's because he's my brother and he's trying to kill me. It's like, well, what about all the other people he's just killing for the heck of it? It's like, it's not like there's this like big fated thing, it's like, oh, he's trying to kill me and all my friends and my son and family and whatnot. It's like, oh, it's like, or he's just kind of a psycho killer, and he's kind of like finally found that one that he wanted to get, and considers it somewhat personal, or however, that could have been just as viable of an angle.
Yeah, all the rest of you are just dying because you're just in the way. You are added casualties.
Yeah, but like I said, even still, they still could have had it been a sort of lore that after the events of that night, she did find out that he was in fact her brother, and as like a bit of an explanation for it. And that's just something that's happened in the meantime without making the specific events of Halloween 2 have happened, having had occurred,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's many different angles that you could have played this film off of. And I mean, did we get the best one? I mean, it's the one we got on film.
I think we got like 75% of the best way this movie could have gone, like 75 to 80. It's like almost could have been a perfect kind of sequel,
10% of that missed opportunity is the mask, right? All the different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll get into all that. We got a long episode here. We'll get into all that.
We sure do. Why don't we go ahead and get into a trailer? We'll get a plot synopsis read off, and then we'll come back and continue on with the episode so we can get into all of that extra stuff on Halloween H2O.
It's 1998 in a remote California town at a secluded private school.
We could have a Halloween party, just the 4 of us. We could have a roaming orgy.
I love the way this man thinks.
No booze, No drugs, no kidding.
One teacher is living in fear.
I'm not who you think I am. I changed my name when I went into hiding.
Terrible. Take off your clothes.
My brother killed my sister
How'd he do that?
with a really big kitchen knife.
That's enough. I can't take it, Mom. He's dead. It's been 20 years. What's he waiting for? Don't you think he would have shown up by now?
What's going on, baby?
I don't know. This is a sick joke.
Now,
Come on!
the face of good and the face of evil will meet one last time. But this time, it's going to be a fight to the finish. This summer, terror won't be taking a vacation. Halloween H2O.
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
I've had my share.
It has been 20 years since Michael Myers escaped from Smith's Grove and returned to his hometown of Haddonfield to kill his long-lost sister, Laurie Strode. After an explosion at Haddonfield Memorial Hospital caused by Dr. Sam Loomis, Michael's body disappeared and was presumed dead. On October 29, 1998, Marion Whittington, Loomis's former colleague who took care of him until his death, returns home to the house they shared in Langdon, Illinois, only to find that it has been broken into and discovers that the file on Laurie Strode is missing. Marion seeks help from her teenage neighbor Jimmy, only to discover that he and his friend Tony have been murdered by Michael before she, too, is killed. Michael drives away in Jimmy's car as the police arrive on the scene. In Summer Glen, California, Laurie lives under the identity of Carrie Tate, having faked her death to stay hidden from Michael. She lives with her son John and is the head mistress of Hillcrest Academy, a private boarding school where she is supported by her secretary, Norma Watson, and guidance counselor Will Brennan, with whom she is in a relationship. Despite the normal life she has built for herself, the traumatic events of her past have caused her to suffer from chronic nightmares as well as becoming an alcoholic, living in fear that her brother will one day find her. Michael, having gotten a flat tire, is forced to steal another vehicle from a woman and her daughter who stop by a highway rest area and inadvertently leaves them both unharmed and stranded. Back at the academy, most of the faculty and students are preparing to leave for a trip to Yosemite. Laurie has forbidden John to go, afraid that something bad will happen to him while he's gone. John's girlfriend, Molly Cartwell, is unable to attend as well, prompting fellow couple Charlie Devereaux and Sarah Wainthrope to forego the trip so that they can all have a Halloween party on campus. Laurie, following a heated argument with John about how her fears are affecting him, changes her mind about not letting him go on the trip, now afraid that him being around her on Halloween is too dangerous, though he ultimately decides to remain behind with Molly, Charlie, and Sarah unbeknownst to his mother. After most of the teachers and students have departed, Ronnie Jones, a security guard who earlier helped John and Charlie sneak out of school, spots Michael's stolen truck parked at the main gate and goes to investigate, unaware as Michael sneaks onto the school property. Earlier that day, Laurie had a quiet exchange with Norma, whose warm maternal advice offered her a rare moment of reassurance. Norma then departed for the weekend, leaving Laurie to reflect on the encounter. Strengthened by the conversation, Laurie reveals her true identity to Will and reflects on the unsettling fact that John is now the same age she was when Michael first came after her. When she tries to call John, she discovers the phones are down and that he never left for the trip. Arming herself with a revolver, Laurie joins Will and Ronnie to search for her son and his friends. Unfortunately, Michael finds them first and kills Charlie and Sarah in a gruesome manner. John and Molly are then attacked while trying to escape. Michael attempts to kill Molly, but John intervenes and is stabbed in the leg. The two barely manage to flee and are rescued by Laurie, who comes face to face with her brother for the first time in 20 years. Will accidentally shoots Ronnie in the head, mistaking his shadow for Michael approaching from around a corner. As Laurie is checking Ronnie's body, Michael emerges from a doorway behind Will and stabs him in the back, killing him. Laurie then tricks Michael and momentarily stuns him while she retrieves John and Molly from her hiding place. The trio make a run for Laurie's truck and drive off toward the main gate of the school. Knowing that Michael will never stop hunting her, she sends them on without her to get help, locks the gate, arms herself with an axe, and heads back up to the campus to confront Michael once and for all. Following a deadly game of cat and mouse, Laurie stabs Michael several times and shoves him off a balcony through a table in the cafeteria below. As she prepares to stab him one final time, Ronnie, who survived the gunshot, stops her, believing Michael to be dead. The authorities arrive a short time later, and the entire school becomes a crime scene. A seemingly dead Michael is put in a body bag and loaded into a coroner's van. But Laurie knows that he is still alive, having grown accustomed to her brother's tricky nature. She grabs her axe, steals a police officer's gun, and hijacks the van with the intent of killing him for good. Michael awakens down the road, breaks out of the bag, and attacks Laurie, who slams on the brakes, sending him crashing through the windshield. As Michael sits up and then proceeds to stand, Laurie drives into him and then off the road. Laurie manages to jump free of the van as it tumbles down the embankment, while Michael is pinned between the van itself and a downed tree. Bloodied and bruised, she makes her way down to the bottom and calls out to her brother. The two siblings share a moment as they reach out for one another. Laurie feels a moment of pity for Michael before raising her axe and decapitating him. Sirens approach in the distance as she closes her eyes and takes several deep breaths as the scene cuts to black.
Way to knock that one out of the park.
Good Lord, there are some unexpected run-on sentences in that one. Jiminy crickets.
All right, how about we bounce over to some numbers here? Halloween H2O had a budget of $17 million with a box office gross of $75 million. So what is that just about 27 years later here?
Yeah, that would be the rough equivalent of a film having a $33 million budget today, about 33.6, and having a box office return at about 148.4 million. So, 30 million sunk into it, 150 million return, essentially.
Exactly the reason why we have a sequel. And this was definitely meant to be the end with the ending we got, and they found a cheap way to get out of that and get a
that's
sequel.
A story for
money.
Another episode, I believe.
Oh, it will be, but it definitely warrants a sequel making that kind of money.
Yeah, I certainly think we'll get into it, but I think this would have been. I mean, without saying too much about other things, I think this would have served as a satisfying epilogue / final chapter for the whole Michael Laurie thing. I think it is, flaws and all. I think all these attempts to sort of do the franchise do-over and re-end it or reconclude it in this different way, generally speaking, I think this one, I think none of them are perfect, but I think this one generally gets more things right than wrong compared to some of the other ones. Maybe we'll talk about it.
Absolutely, it would have been a good wrap up and conclusion, and a good one for the fans to go out on. So
certainly,
when it comes to sequels, we'll talk about it. But when it comes to this film, it wraps up very well.
I was watching this film it was rented on VHS, and it was a room full of at least my aunt and uncle, and I'm pretty sure some other maybe one or two of my parents and some cousins and maybe a brother. Definitely had. It was like a room. It was a movie night kind of a night, and I can tell you that the moment where she decapitates him at the end was a very, very satisfying moment for the people that were watching it with me. And anytime I'd ever watched it with other people or showed it to anyone, it always was like it's a show-stopping kind of a moment. It's very enjoyable, and so to get that just like definitive, cut his freaking head off kind of conclusion, and so anything that spoils that's kind of going to leave a sour taste in your mouth, and also any other attempt to try and do that kind of final thing over again is ultimately, I think, going to just feel a little less satisfying.
Well, I was when I was watching it for the podcast, my little sister had come over and we were getting ready to grill some food while I had the movie on right before a volleyball night, and the ending came up, and Lori had chopped his head off, and my little sister's like, I don't remember that ever happening in one of these movies, and like I made, my older sister and we brought her up on these movies, her growing up just like we did, or we were
Mhm.
brought up with these movies, and she's like, wait, so how is there another one and all this? Like she
Mhm.
started asking the 21 questions, and it's like,
Mhm.
well, you just got to watch the next one then,
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get to the next one.
So it was a fun little conversation that made her, like, the look on her face like, "What? How what's going on?" Like, so
Yeah.
that was fun. It was a fun rewatch for this film.
For sure. For sure.
I'll continue with some more numbers here. So Halloween H2O has a 5.8 out of 10 rating on IMDb, a 56% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a 52% rating on Metacritic, and then of course our Google users saved us with 88% of our Google users liking this film. So
Yeah, I'd say they're more correct than some of those other middle of the road, like I think it's got more going for it than it has going against it, maybe.
yeah, and I mean we got some good screen time, and we got Michael Myers being on screen for right around 15 minutes, or about 17.5% of the film. And then there are only 6 deaths in the film, averaging out to about one every 14.3 minutes. So that's a little on the slower side. Like we said, kind of
Yeah,
back to the
one
first 2
one
films.
one thing I was going to point out now that you've talked about the deaths, is that we get 3 at the beginning, and then we do not get another sort of death happening until about like 57 minutes into the movie with Charlie. And I was shocked. I was like, they really haven't put anybody, like they've done a little bit of like scares and like Michael at the rest stop and the lady and the daughter, like you think they're in sort of danger because Michael's there, and then he ultimately just steals the car. Like they've done like the sort of like, and they did like the sort of like Michael in the background poking around the windows, like all that stuff. But it's like they legitimately went basically, after your cold open, they went basically an hour into the movie before anyone got killed. And that just seems like a big one for a slasher movie. Like that's a big jump.
Yeah, you're talking about a little over 2/3 of the movie in between kills.
Yeah, I think they were trying to be a bit with the times of like, I think in the world of Scream, it was like if you just see the killer, that was like scary again for audiences, just having the killer around because like the violence could happen and the killer was there. So I think they were trying to do a little bit of like a slower burn and not just like kill, kill, kill and sort of like ramp up to one kill, and so one kill is a big deal and that kind of a thing. But it was kind of shocking that it's that long between the kills in the movie.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk about some of the kills for sure, but it's definitely on the slower side for the kill counts, on the lower side for total number of kills. And I wouldn't have mind a little more. You could keep the gore away. I mean, this film isn't very bloody, but I wouldn't mind another kill or two, and give us one at a half hour, and then maybe one at 45 minutes or 40 minutes, and then Charlie at close to an hour in.
Yeah, maybe give us one more couple, maybe give us one more couple as part of the teens group, or maybe, or another member of the staff that could have been, like another like she's got a Laurie Strode has a boyfriend who's a counselor, maybe she's got a female friend, teacher or staff member that is more like comparable to her age or maybe a little younger and like, is like a friend, and maybe that person can get kind of like a little like stalking sequence and death, in that intermediary time between the two kills.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be against it. I mean, what we get, I mean, I'm okay with it, being like the kind of like they took this back to, per se, the original 2 films. So, they brought it back, like you said, to more of the stalking vibe, the Michael in the shadows type thing. So they brought the body count back down as well, brought brought the violence down, brought the gore down. So I'm okay with it in that aspect. But I'm always up for another couple kills in a film.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit more to keep the pace going, keep the tension high a little bit. Yeah, I mean, because it's certainly not one of those things where it's like, oh, these characters were so meaningful and endearing that they wanted to be slow about killing them. It's like the two, like, you know, Charlie and Sarah are not like these like fantastic characters. You know, it's not like they're like, oh my gosh, they're so key and important and valuable that you want to make sure that they, you know, that when their death is so meaningful that it's okay that we go that long between deaths. It's like, I don't know about all that.
Nope, I agree with you. I will always take more, and it, like I said, it doesn't have to be gruesome. Just give us one every like 15 minutes or so. Every
Hmm.
12 to 15 minutes. I'm happy with that.
Agreed.
So that is all I have for you on the numbers section. I will get into some fun facts because I have quite a bit for you, and I have a couple of them that are going to take me a little bit of time to read. So there's a couple you'll have to bear with me. But my first
No, that's
one
all right. That's
is
all right.
that Jamie Lee Curtis considers this film a thank you note for her fans. And she was quoted saying, "Without that early career, I truly don't think I would have been an actress." So that she called this her thank you and like kind of the love letter to the fans.
Yeah, and I mean, coming because True Lies was '94, and that was a huge hit with her and Arnold and James Cameron. Like that was a big blockbuster movie, and so it's easy to see how, you know, she's not like Jamie Lee Curtis has never been like the mega star. I don't think you know, but she was certainly, she became a sort of real actress that had kind of risen out of the gutters perceived of the horror slasher genre. And so I can imagine that a lot of people probably assumed like, well, she's not going to come back and do another Halloween movie. But she kind of had that, like the fact that she kind of had that itch and that desire and that interest to do it and kind of do it well. And from what I understand, I think it was Jamie Lee Curtis who, when she was kind of, because when she joined Halloween H2O, the movie kind of changed a little bit. And I think she was even maybe angling to try and get John Carpenter as the director. And that would have been like if John Carpenter had come back in that sort of Wes Craven's New Nightmare kind of a way, where Wes Craven came back to Freddy. If John Carpenter had come back to direct this film and maybe had it be just a direct continuation from only the first one, not even including the second one, I think that would have been something like instant classic worthy almost.
And I do have I have a fun fact about that for you about
Okay, so
Jamie
I
Lee
overstepped
Curtis.
a little
And
bit. I overstepped a
nope,
little bit.
you are absolutely all right. I'll get to my next one and then well, I'll hop to that one. But my next one is just LL Cool J had always been a fan of the Halloween movies, with his mother taking him to see the original film when he was just 9 years old. So he kind of jumped at the opportunity to star in this film.
That's awesome. LL Cool J had a cool mom take him to go see the original. That's good. That's a good
And
thing.
and he had a good couple years here back to back with this and Deep Blue Sea. So
Yeah, yeah. I always thought it was very cool that, you know, because I mean, there's a couple of the musicians, rappers, artists, singers, whatever, that like they try to do the movie thing as like a little bit of like a one-off gimmick, and it's like it almost always feels like a little cringy, you know. And we might have a little bit to talk about in our next movie here, but like LL Cool J, like it seemed like he kind of more or less tried to do it like in kind of like the right way, if you will. Like he's like a supporting character in this movie. He's not like the star. He's not the hero. He gets to not die, which I always thought was fun. I always thought that was fun. He gets to like be a non-hero character, non-main character, black guy in a slasher movie who gets to not be killed. It's like that's a nice little thing. And then he kind of like in Deep Blue Sea, he gets like a larger and more prominent role after having like a smaller role in this movie. So it's like it seemed like LL Cool J kind of like went about sliding into the acting thing like a little bit more realistically. You know, he wasn't out there trying to just like be the star of a movie overnight, you know, anything like that. So I always dug the way LL Cool J kind of went into the horror thriller genre a little bit.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you. I loved seeing him survive in this film. And I liked his character in this film. So I was
Yeah, I
glad
mean, I
that he
think I,
took the part.
I think I'm, yeah, I think I'm more familiar with LL Cool J movies than I am with LL Cool J music. To be frank, like I know some LL Cool J songs, but it's like when I think of LL Cool J, I think of this and Deep Blue Sea. I don't immediately go to his songs that I like. You know,
Is it SWAT was another one he was in.
Oh yeah, SWAT wasn't bad. There was another kind of more like horror monster, kind of like body swap, body imitating kind of a thing. Like it was like Mind something or something like that. There was some other one that I remember seeing a bunch of trailers for, but
He hasn't been in
a ton.
most of the films that he has been in. I have enjoyed.
Yeah, yeah. I always liked seeing him and stuff. You know. Oh, yeah. So I always enjoyed him. You know.
So my next one for you here is the one that we had spoke on a little bit ago.
Mind
It was
Hunters. I'm sorry. It was Mind Hunters. I'm sorry. I had to say it.
I thought you were looking it up, but I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
no, yeah, that was the one. That was the one.
But my next one for you here is one that we had already talked a little bit on, and it's John Carpenter was originally in negotiations to be the director since Jamie Lee Curtis wanted to reunite the cast and crew from the original film, and it was believed that Carpenter opted out because he wanted no active part in the sequel. However, this was not the case. He had agreed to direct the movie, but his starting fee as director was $10 million, and he wanted a three-picture deal with Dimension Films. Carpenter rationalized this by saying the hefty fee was compensation for revenue he never received from the original Halloween from 1978, and a matter that was still a point of contention between Carpenter and producer Mustafa Akkad even after 20 years had passed. And then when Akkad and Dimension Films' Weinstein brothers balked at Carpenter's demands, he walked away from the project.
Gosh, I mean, it's I'm not here to like take sides and say who was right and who was wrong, but ultimately what did we end up with? We ended up with the movie not being directed by John Carpenter when it should have been. Is it our place to say, "Oh, John Carpenter should have compromised," or they just should have met all of his wants and demands and just given him whatever he wanted to make sure he was on the film? I'm not sure. I would have, I mean, they say the best deal is one where neither side is 100% happy, but both are happy enough to make the deal. And so I would have liked to have seen it. I would have liked to see John Carpenter direct this movie. That would have been great to see.
Well, if I'm him, I just tell him like, look at my resume: the original Halloween, The Fog, The Thing, Assault on Precinct 13, and like,
Yeah.
did he? I believe he directed Prince of Darkness with Donald Pleasance. Am I thinking
Yeah,
of that
and
right?
so yeah, and it's like, and again, I don't know how hard line either party, like, if he's at 100 and they're at 0, and neither of them are willing to budge, it's like, okay, well, I guess it's like nothing can be agreed upon. But it's like, did it have to be 10 million? Like,
Could have
if they
been
had said
8.
if they had said 9 or 8, would he have been like, no, go to hell, it's 10? Like, it's like, at that point, it's like, well, then how much are you really wanting to do it, unless you just get every single little thing you're after? But then also on their end, it's like, well, how much, like do you want the man back or not? Do you understand the value of it or not? The promotional value of bringing John Carpenter back, and the value and quality of the movie and bringing him back. That's certainly would be worth a lot of money. Certainly would be worth something. So it's unfortunate that you would have wished that the overtures could have been made, and that they could have gotten that deal done, because that would have been great.
Yeah, even if it adds, if this budget goes from 17 to 25 million, but you gross 100 million instead of 75, you're already on the winning end of that deal.
The power and legacy of John Carpenter's Halloween 20 years later, starring Jamie Lee Curtis, that's a win on the poster right then and there. But whatever.
I 100% agree with you.
I always have this way of thinking of it and looking of it and like, but like, what about history? Like, what about the legacy of it? Like, we have Halloween H2O directed by Steve Miner, which, no disrespect to him, directed Friday the 13th 2 and 3. Like, not, I'm not besmirching him at all, but it's like, like, how do you put a number value on like John Carpenter's Halloween H2O? Like, I don't know. Like, we'd be talking about it 30 years later. We're talking about this movie almost 30 years later, and it could have been a John Carpenter movie, and it should have been.
Could have been huge, John
Yeah.
Carpenter, John Carpenter's
Huge.
Halloween H2O, like you said, starring Jamie Lee Curtis, introducing Josh Hartnett, with LL Cool J.
Would have been huge.
So my next one for you here is during the scene where Norma is leaving, she stands in front of the car from the 1960 film Psycho, and the music playing in the background at this part is also from Psycho. Janet Leigh, who plays Norma in this film, played Marion in Psycho. The license plate on the car is also the same as the second car Marion buys in Psycho, with the license plate NFB 418, which are Norman Bates' initials. And then lastly, Norma is the first name of Norman Bates' mother from Psycho. And then Janet Leigh, who plays Norma, is also Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. So a lot of connections there.
Yep, and the character of Sam Loomis in Halloween was named after the character of Sam Loomis from Psycho.
Exactly. So we have connections upon connections.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite bit of trivia about this movie. I am a huge, as much as I am a fan of Halloween and this and that, the other thing. I love the original Psycho so very, very much. I love Janet Leigh in that movie very much, and so like I love this connection. I love this legacy DNA threads that the Halloween franchise manages to have back to Psycho with these connections with Janet Leigh, obviously, and the Sam Loomis connection. I've always very much loved the threads that tie Psycho to the Halloween movies.
Well, if I would have known that you have such an appreciation for Psycho, I would have recommended we do those earlier on the podcast as well.
Oh, that's okay. There will be a time. There will be a time. I have a massive affinity for the first two. Beyond that, we can have, it's, your mileage may vary, but the first two I think are just, if you're looking for a scary movie double feature, the first two are excellent. The first two are excellent.
I have seen the original and the remake, so those once we get to those,
the remake is a very mixed bag.
it is. The first one is an instant classic, but after that, I have not seen the other ones, so I will have to get onto those.
2 is far better than any remake, I can tell you that much.
Here's some more fan service like the last one that we just talked about with the Psycho connections. The line, "Everyone is entitled to one good scare," is said by Norma to Laurie when Sheriff Brackett originally said it in the first Halloween to Laurie.
Indeed. That's also a great callback. This is the inception of movie callback trivias here. You've got the Janet Leigh, Jamie Lee Curtis connection, all the connections back to Psycho, referencing the original movie. Like they go, like it's a deep, deep cut.
Absolutely. This is the shortest Halloween movie in the series with a runtime of 86 minutes, including all credits. As I said earlier, I believe it's about 80 without credits.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I actually dig that. Like, I am all for, especially in the slasher genre, I am all for an 80 to 85-minute movie. Like, I just think, like, lean, mean, to the point, obviously don't, like, butcher the movie to make a short runtime, but I think I think they're kind of better when they're short and sweet,
I agree. It depends on what kind of characters you give me. If you're telling a good story with the film, but if we're just coming and you got some lousy characters, you got the jerk or the horny teenagers, whatever. Like, give me an 80 to 90-minute slasher flick, and let's get some good kills and some good like action or chase scenes in, and let's run through the film.
Agreed.
So this is another connection to some fan service, and it's when Molly's in the classroom, she spots Michael Myers outside the school and gets interrupted by the teacher. And when she looks again, he is gone, just like Jamie Lee Curtis's character did in the original Halloween from 1978.
Yeah, they almost, they have this kind of parallel with her and Laurie, and almost sort of makes you, there's a version of this movie that probably could have existed where it was a new, younger character sort of being molded as the next Laurie Strode archetype, and and that feels like it would have been like a remnant from that kind of a movie. But they have the moment that echoes back, and it's fun to see Laurie go from being the student who is being kind of stalked and scared out the window to now being the teacher, making the very not subtle like literary reference and allusion that's a metaphor for the themes of the film itself.
And that's exactly what I was gonna say. Literally, the student to the teacher.
Hmm.
So this my next one for you is it's it's a little bit kind of more on like the scream with like the self-awareness. I have a feeling this is where something like this might have come from, and it's Jamie Lee Curtis had said that they had asked Mike Myers to do a cameo in the movie, just walking down the street past Lori, and when she does a double take when she sees him, but he said no to the cameo.
Yeah, I don't know about the nature of like doing a double take and like making it like this goofball moment, but also like it is like it's kind like it's one of these things where we look back now and it's like, how did we not get ever a moment where Mike Myers, the actor, ever could make a cameo in a Michael Myers movie? You know, it's like, is it too funny to ever be allowed when it feels like it should be kind of obvious to do at least once? You know, like I don't know, like I don't think it's in bad taste, and I don't think it's like stupid. Like the double take would maybe be a little annoying, but like you could have just threaded him in a cameo at any point in this movie, and like don't say his name, but like the audience would get it. Like he's Mike Myers, like, and it's Michael Myers, you know, like it just would have been. I don't see how that wouldn't have been fun, and you know, I don't know. That's just me.
I think audiences probably would have got a good laugh out of it for
Yeah, especially in the
just for a little
'90s, you
humor.
know. Yeah, especially in the '90s when Mike Myers was doing his old like Austin Powers thing and all that stuff, you know.
Absolutely. Have him as like a barista at a coffee shop or something, So-
Something, you know. Well, it's just like, you know, we have, you know, like in the Godzilla lore of things, there's the character Steve Martin from the American version of the original Godzilla movie, and we have an actor named Steve Martin, and Steve Martin has never been allowed to make any kind of role or cameo in any Godzilla movie ever. Like, how do you not do that? Like, it feels obvious. You have a character that was Steve Martin, and then you have an actor Steve Martin. How do you not do that? You know. There was an intention at one point for one of the unmade American movies that they were going to have Steve Martin play a character named Raymond Burr. So they would be flipping it. So like Raymond Burr, the actor, played a character named Steve Martin, and then they were going to have the actor Steve Martin play a character named Raymond Burr, which would have been a lot of fun, but that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. There's things in these films, like we said, it would have been fun. The audience in the '90s would have got it. Would it have aged well? I mean, who knows? But it would have been fun at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you spoke on this one a little earlier. I threw this in here, and it's director Steve Miner also directed two films and another popular horror series with Friday the 13th Part 2 from 1981 and Friday the 13th Part 3 from 1982.
Yeah, which I always thought was neat trivia as a kid. As a kid, I at a pretty young age, I would like because like I realized like, oh, George Lucas directed Star Wars, Peter Jackson directed Lord of the Rings, Steven Spielberg directed Jurassic Park, you know. And then like so I would look at the directors on the back of movie boxes all the time. I would read the back of movie cases and movie boxes like all the time. And I would look at like, oh, the music, the this, the that, and I would, you know, make the connections of like, oh, this is the same person from this, this is the same person from this. So I always thought it was very fun that someone who directed two Friday the 13th movies directed a Halloween movie.
I was that same way as well. I would read the back of boxes. Like you said, I would kind of keep tabs on who did the music for this film, who directed this film. So when I still do that nowadays. Like, you know, one of my favorite film soundtracks of all time is the Godzilla 2019 soundtrack by Bear McCreary. So anytime I see his name now, I think of that film, and like I try to see what else has he done or what other movies have I watched that he's done. Things like that.
Absolutely. And Steve Miner also directed Lake Placid, which is a great croc movie.
Absolutely. Definitely in the top 10, maybe the top 5.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
So out of those 3 movies, if I can get your opinion quick, Friday the 13th Part 2, Part 3, and Halloween H2O, without spoiling too much, what's your favorite of those 3?
Oof. It's not Friday the 13th Part 3. I'll say that. Um, man, it's tough. In terms of like prestige and aesthetics, like H2O is more of like a big mainstream kind of an A movie, like the production value and whatnot. And I mean, it being newer is probably a little bit of a contributor to that. But I think Friday the 13th Part 2 is probably my favorite of the batch, just because it doesn't really have any of the things that, like, all these movies kind of have things you don't really care for, or things that kind of hold them back. Friday the 13th Part 2, it might not be as ambitious of a project as something like Halloween H2O, but Friday the 13th Part 2 just absolutely understands the assignment and nails it. H2O has a lot of good things and a few rocky things, and it's kind of a somewhat mixed bag. And so, like, if I just had to pick one to be like, what's his best movie just in a vacuum, it's probably Friday Part 2.
Okay. I just wanted to rattle your brain
Of
there
those
for a
of
limit.
those three.
Okay. Figured I would rattle your brain there for a minute and get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think Friday 2. I think it's the best sequel of the three. I think it's the best overall of the three. I think it has the fewest flaws of the three, probably.
I can't disagree with you. I think I agree with you that Friday the 13th Part 2 out of those three is my favorite as well. So
They ain't got no Tina in Halloween H2O.
Well, I got one more fun fact for you here. This is a long one, so bear with me. This has to deal with a huge deleted scene from this film that was going to make it completely different, and it was going to keep it canon with Halloween 4, 5, and 6.
Oof. Okay, do tell.
So the movie was originally supposed to continue from the previous movie, except the unrelated Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Kevin Williamson's challenge was to keep films 4 through 6 in continuity by explaining the death of Laurie Strode and acknowledging her daughter, Jamie Lloyd, from those films as canon. His original treatment for Halloween H2O, therefore, included a scene in which Sarah, a student at the school where Laurie teaches under the name Carrie Tate, gives a class report on the Haddonfield murders. She goes into great detail about Michael Myers' killing spree, with his sister Laurie being the sole survivor, and confirms her daughter, Jamie, later losing both her parents in a car accident. However, Sarah then reports a rumor that Laurie isn't dead but lives under another identity. She supposedly gave Jamie up for adoption to keep the girl safe from Michael, but Jamie's mangled corpse was found a year ago anyway. Upon hearing of her daughter's death, a grief-stricken Laurie retreats to a restroom and vomits. Williamson's explanation was that Laurie had faked her own death and got into the witness protection program with her son under the aliases Carrie and John Tate. This scene was written out of the film together with every reference to Halloween 4 through 6 when it was decided that these sequels would be ignored and the film would directly follow from Halloween 2 in 1981.
See, and that's interesting. Oh, by the way, it's not the character in Friday the 13th Part 2 is not Tina, it's Terry. But anyways, for anyone, looking for research purposes, I think it's a net positive. Like, I'm not in favor of, like, saying like these movies shouldn't exist or shouldn't be in continuity, but I think it was the right decision to kind of go into the reboot direction with this one. And also, my whole thing with that was like, look, that would be interesting, but how do you square in terms of ages? Because if John is 17 in 1980, in 1998, John is turning 17, so he would have been born in 1981, and in 88 and 89, Jamie is 7 or 9, depending on which movie you believe. She's somewhere between 7 and 9 across the span of 1 year. But so she would have been born in that sort of 80 to 81 range as well. So how do you square that? It's like, so she gives her daughter up for adoption and goes in and fakes her death and goes into witness protection, and then potentially immediately had another child that she decided to keep because maybe it was just after she went in. But then in Halloween 4, it's claimed that it's been 11 months since Laurie died or something like that. So it's not like it was like when they were. So again, in what scenario does she give up Jamie but keep John? Should she adopt John? Like, it opens up all this whole can of worms. It's probably best left, not open.
Yeah, I think you could have done that, but it would have taken 10 or 12 more rewrites and edits of the script. You'd have had to have gone through a lot to like thoroughly explain this. And now we're talking about an hour and 45-minute movie so people can understand what's happening and how she
Yeah,
maybe there's a scene
it
where she talks about how she went into hiding and what happened with her daughter. Like maybe she's talking to the therapist about this after she finds out her daughter
yeah.
dies, or the counselor, I mean.
Yeah, and again, a scenario by which Jamie and John are both her birth children, and they're both in terms of timeline like the same exact age. Like, in what scenario do you keep one kid but not the other? You know, and then so it's like then you would have been talking about like you're trying to rework the whole script. Like, does she not have a son? Is this maybe like is she like married to another character, and so John is then her adopted son? And so it's like or her stepson or something, so it's then a different kind of dynamic. Like, you know, it's like then you could have tackled it. It's like, yeah, she gave up a daughter and like now she's like raising someone else's son, kind of a thing. It's like it would have been a whole different piece of the movie that I don't think anyone would have been interested in at that time. So it probably is better to kind of just cut your loss and say like, hey, we gotta clear the decks here a little bit.
Absolutely. Start over, keep the film short and sweet, you know, kind of give us a fresh story and go from there.
Yeah, and I you know, and I still say they should have gone all the way back to 1 for this one, but that's okay.
Well, when it comes to Halloween H2O, who was your favorite character? That is all I have for fun facts, so we'll roll into that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's Lori, right? You know, it's her. Like this is her movie now, in the same way that the other sequels were sort of Loomis's movies. And like John's an interesting teenage character. As a young person, I always admired his sort of attitude a little bit. You know, I never had attitude like that, but it was fun to see it. You know, he's cut from that kind of like John Connor cloth from T2, you know, a little bit like young and smart, too smart for his own good kind of a thing. And so like, but Lori's the hero, you know, how do you not like her the most?
I absolutely agree with you. I went with Lori as well. And I liked seeing her arc in this of how to like seeing how she was constantly running from her brother and or Michael Myers, and in at the end she finally decides like, you know what? Like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna confront him. This is gonna be a him and me kind of battle, and I'm gonna risk my life. But if I'm dying, like he's going out with me, type of like persona in this, and she just it brought her character like full circle to be like that badass, like how you said like John was like the John Connor, like she went full like Sarah Connor in this and like took it into her
Very,
own hands and
yeah,
like took
very
command.
much so. Yeah, very much so. They're sort of stepping in the footsteps of you know your Ellen Ripleys and your Sarah Connors with Laurie in this movie. Very much so.
Absolutely. And I thought they portrayed her, I thought her like PTSD about it and stuff. It wasn't over the top, you know. She's still scared and like has you know bad dreams and visions of Michael Myers, but like it wasn't over the top.
Yeah, and I like the dynamic that she has these sort of figments of imagination of Michael, and then she kind of like has to like close her eyes and stop to kind of like, and then it just kind of fades away, and that's like a recurring thing. And I like that they play with that a little bit later on in the movie, where she thinks she sees Michael and she's trying to like take a moment and see if it fades away, and then it doesn't, and then it doesn't. You know, I kind of like that's a lot of fun to have.
I'm if it works every time I close my eyes and it doesn't that one time and I still see him walking, I'm gone.
Yeah, I'm at least doing like the precautionary, like start taking the steps backwards, you know, like
Yeah, that
you're at
scene
least
always
like,
confused me. Like, run.
yeah, like you are relying way too much on your psychoses right now.
Yeah. I am out of there. I will give you my favorite score of the film, and that is it was honestly a really easy one for me in this film, which some of the Halloweens have some good tracks in it. But I mean, the one that I went with was the end titles because it takes that original Halloween theme from like John Carpenter's like 1978 film, and Laurie cuts Michael's head off at the end, and you hear the that score kick in, and when the credits start to play, it is that back to the original score from the original film, and it like as a kid, like when I seen that I and like heard that music, I recognized it from the original film. So that made me think like that's the end of the story. Like this is the conclusion to the Halloween films. Like it started with this music and now it's ending with this music. So the ending titles was easily the choice I had to go with for this film.
Very good choice. Can't go wrong with that. But I actually I went kind of the opposite because for me the opening title music was mine. It kind of feels, after watching the various sequels to the original, they were all very kind of like indie productions. They kind of felt kind of small and kind of mom and pops in their dynamics and their production value. Even 6 to an extent. But this one, when Michael Myers, yeah, right, and then it closes and like the credits start and the music comes in, it just makes it feel like you're dealing with this like epic mythos of this iconic character, and it feels so like big time Hollywood. This is clearly the post Scream age where slashers are A movies now. They can be like appointment TV. They can be like the event film in a sense for the modern 90s. Well, at the time, the modern 90s era, like they can be a big deal. And so, and you feel that in the opening. It's like, it's like Halloween's big time now. Like it's not just like, oh, the fun little side movies, horror slashers that you enjoy. It's like, no, it's like these are like a big theatrical event. So it always just felt like so big time, so real deal, and I love that whole opening credits montage and the way it just gets you pumped for what's about to go down.
And I battled with myself between the end titles and the main titles, the opening titles, because like you said, the Michael Myers, yeah, right. He closes the door and you hear like the thunder crack,
Mm-hmm.
and it just the opening main titles are very loud. They have a lot of bass, and it's just a completely different like incarnation of the Halloween score. Like it's completely different, but it sounds good. And I mean, it's one of the parts of the movie that I want to crank up when it happens. So I mean, I don't think you could go wrong with either choice.
Indeed.
So did you have a favorite quote or most memorable line from this film, or a couple of them?
Yeah, I got 2, and like I said, I divulged earlier that I saw this movie like this was the first Halloween movie I saw all the way through, and as quite a youngster, maybe 7 years old, but more than likely just 6, and um so this was the first time that I ever heard anything from Dr. Sam Loomis, even though he's not portrayed by Donald Pleasance in these opening dialogue. But this was the first time that I ever heard that I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. And the way they use that in the opening titles of this movie was always just like chilling and epic to me. It was like awe-inspiring. And as a kid, I didn't really have the context for who this Loomis guy was or what he kind of meant to the franchise or anything. I just had that line being said like in with this epic music and this build up, and then that image of like the drawn sketch of Michael. And it was just like, I'm just like, that is like the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. Like, that's iconic stuff. I didn't know it was from another movie, you know, I didn't know any of that, but it was like, it was always just like stuck with me. So like, it's weird to say that's my favorite line of the movie, but like, that is my most favorite line of the movie is that callback to Loomis's dialogue. And then my sort of like B choice, I would say, is when Will and Laurie are having a little dialogue exchange, and he says, "What should I do?" And she says, "Try to live." That always, you know, that's like a cool action line in a movie that's not really an action movie, and I always enjoyed that as well.
Those are good. I had a couple as well. I had two that made me laugh, and one was very simple, and it came in the beginning of the film, and it was from one of the neighbors. Tony asked Nurse Marion. He goes, "Hasn't anyone ever told you that secondhand smoke kills?" And she replies, "Yeah, but they're all dead." So like that gave me a good little laugh on the
Yeah, I love
rewatch.
that she's back from the first two movies. By the way, I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if it is a short little like stint of her in the film, I did like that we got her back, and like it showed that like it like her like was she was like caring for Loomis, and like all of his files were
Mhm.
like in the office and things like that.
Yeah, and they bring back Mr. Sandman, which was made famous by Halloween 2. You know, in terms of this franchise, you know, it's like those are some good callbacks. You know, I dig that. Like they do honor like the Halloween 2 part of the legacy, which is quite nice.
Yeah, absolutely. They call back to the classics, and I mean they did some nice fan service for us for
Yeah,
sure.
and also, you know, for the eagle-eyed viewers, little Jimmy here is played by young Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's gone on to have quite a film career. But you know, it was always fun to go back and be like, wow, that's Joseph Gordon-Levitt, you know, who ends up being in The Dark Knight Rises and all these other things, and you know, and he's just a young little bit part in this movie.
And of course, in a Halloween film, he shows up wearing a hockey mask as a fun joke.
Yes, and I liked I it was always so real to me that like he in a scared stupor wrecks her kitchen and hits a bunch of stuff, and then like he goes and tells her like he steals her booze, and then he's like yeah, they made a big mess in the kitchen too, huh? Like he's just blaming it all on the intruder. I'm like, that is so great. I always thought that was so funny.
Well, and that's funny too. And well, one of the other ones that made me laugh was it's John and Molly talking as they're kind of like setting up for their date night, and he goes, "It just occurred to me today that I've never celebrated Halloween before." And she goes, "Why is that?" And he says sarcastically, like, "Oh, we've got a psychotic serial killer in the family who loves to butcher people on Halloween, and I just thought it in bad taste to celebrate." It's just that's not something that rolls off the tongue easily, but he says it with like such sarcasm and like very little care.
Yeah, you could definitely see, you know, Josh Hartnett didn't necessarily have like the biggest, wildest, craziest, most successful career in all aspects, but like you can definitely see like where like he was a young talent here. Like he you know accommodates himself very well in this movie, and he gives a good performance. And I mean, you know, years and years later, you know, he's in like a supporting role in something like Oppenheimer, and he's absolutely killing it. So I mean, you know, he's done well for himself.
Absolutely, and I mean, I like a lot that he is in. So I mean, I thought that was a funny little line, and I'll give you my favorite kind of dialogue exchange between two characters, and it was between Laurie Strode and Molly in the classroom. And Laurie Strode, she goes, "Molly, please, do you have any thoughts on Victor and Elizabeth?" And she goes, "Well, I think that Victor should have confronted the monster sooner. He's completely responsible for Elizabeth's death because he was so paralyzed by fear that he never did anything. It took death for the guy to get a clue." And Laurie Strode responds, "And why do you think he was finally able to confront his monster?" And she replies, "I think that Victor had reached a point in his life where he had nothing left to lose. I mean, the monster saw to that by killing off everyone that he loved. Victor finally had to face it. It was about redemption. It was his fate." And I think like you can see Laurie Strode like kind of give her a look, and she realizes like later in the film like that is setting up the climax to this film. I just thought it was a really good way to set up what our ending was going to be, but without the crowd actually knowing it until the ending happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Not subtle in the way they're doing that. It's like it's very much saying like, look, Lori, like you can choose to face Michael or you can wait till he kills everyone you know and love. It's like you got to either stop him before he does it or you're going to have to try to stop him after he does it, but you're going to have to face him one way or another. Again, like not subtle and a good literary, making a good literary connection and allusion and metaphor. It's like nothing wrong with that. And I dug that exchange as well.
Absolutely. So, what was your favorite scene in the film? We'll run that one down and see. I figure we might match up here.
I mean, it pairs exactly with what you were just talking about. It's when Lori decides to face Michael. She tells the kids to keep driving down to the Beckers, and then she goes and gets the axe, and then she's walking up the hill, and you've got the great silhouette with her shadow across the frame of the image, and she just yells Michael, and then the music kicks in, and it's like it's on, like it's showtime. Like, how do you not love that scene? That's what the whole movie's building toward and all about, is that moment. So how is that not everyone's favorite?
Exactly. That's exactly what I chose as well. And you explained the exact part that I was going to, with her yelling out Michael's name and that Halloween theme like booming in the background and kicking in, and as she walks up to the school and goes searching for him. And that whole battle where, she's hiding under the tables and she runs upstairs and she's throwing knives at him or stabs him with the flagpole, like that whole like it's probably like 12 or 15 minutes of the film, but that hands down, I think that kicks in right about like an hour in, 55 minutes to an hour in. And from there to the ending of the film is just glorious for the Halloween franchise. And what we'd been waiting, like you said, the entire film for, was that big climax battle between those two.
Yeah, it's just a great moment to have been, to have found like a sold out showing of this movie on like opening night, opening weekend, and to just be in there to kind of feel that energy, with a bunch of diehard Halloween fans. Like, it would have been, this isn't necessarily regarded as a ton of people's top Halloween movie, perhaps, but I feel like when it came out, like it was a big moment. I think the fans probably went nuts when that happened.
Yeah, I am sure that it was a good vibe and a good energy in the theater, seeing these two duke it out after 20 years and subpar sequels, and Jamie Lee Curtis coming back for a triumphant return. I'm sure it was a fun and exciting time in the theater.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll give you my favorite kill or death in the film, and it was Will. They think they shot LL Cool J, and they thought he was Michael, so they think he's dead. And Will kind of just like stands up and backs up, and he's like, "Oh, I thought." And Michael, here he comes, Michael through the door, and like it's not so much the like stabbing itself; it's that Michael actually like he has the knife inside of, it's like his stomach, like chest cavity area, and he's just like ripping it up his
Yeah.
sternum. That's what makes it's so
Yeah,
brutal.
the convulsions on the knife were always very they were the stuff of nightmares when I was a kid.
Yeah, you could, the way you see the knife and like his hand and stuff like going up the shirt. It's a very brutal kill without like being over the top with like the gore. So I liked
Mhm.
and appreciated that one for that.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. My favorite kill I actually went with was Sarah's, just because it's a very sort of prolonged kind of murder sequence where she finds her boyfriend's dead body, and she gets you know cut in the leg, and then she's going up the sort of the the I don't know, the dishes chute, the and and she's going up it, and then as she's getting out, Michael cuts the rope, and it slams and almost takes her leg off, or like her leg is just mangled, and that just like makes me cringe every single time. And she's crawling one way, and then Michael shows up, and she starts to try to slide backwards, and he walks up and just slowly just starts stabbing her, and then leaves her suspended, hanging from the ceiling light for her friends to find. Like, that is just like, talk about an absolutely vicious, prolonged death sequence in a slasher movie. That's a really good one.
I will give you that, because watching it the other night, I mean, when when that thing, the like mini little elevator like falls on her leg and smashes it. It gave me like the chills right there, and I was just like, oh, because you know that it felt terrible when it happened, and probably after it happened, while she's crawling away, it probably feels even worse.
That's as bad as it can get, dude.
Yeah.
It's like, why couldn't he just kill me? You know?
Why couldn't it have been my head in there or something, and I didn't feel a thing?
Yeah, something. Yeah, I should have just let him stab me before I went on the elevator.
Yeah, so those two are, I mean, mine was definitely a lot quicker, and yours was more drawn out. But two pretty brutal kills in a film that's not very gory or doesn't show a lot. You know, it leaves a lot to the imagination for most of the kills.
Indeed.
So what did you think about the masks in Halloween H2O? There are quite a few of them.
Yeah, so there's one that was kind of like, that's clearly the one that they replaced, that you kind of only see it in like offhand moments and in certain shots. And that's kind of like a weird one. It gives me like the kind of like Halloween 4 vibes, where it's like it doesn't really look right. It looks like too like, I don't know, like all like lacking detail, like it's very like flat in the features. And so I don't have very many kind things to say about that. I For the one that's kind of, and then there's the famous one where it's like this weird digital mask that's superimposed like over the bad version of the mask, and it just like looks really really like cartoony and weird, and like we don't need to say anything about that because it's just that one shot. It's just like, what is going on there? But for like the main mask, the face, I like the tightness to the face where it exposes the eyeballs and shows his sort of human features around his eyeballs. I don't like. It feels like that was something done to kind of make it feel more Scream-ish, in the sense of like, oh, we just want it to feel like it's like a normal guy behind the mask. Like they almost wanted him to feel less supernatural. Same reason why they maybe didn't put the scars on his hands and stuff like that from the burns. Like they didn't want like lore. They didn't want him to seem like the Shape. They wanted him to seem like, oh, he's a killer in a mask. Like he's just a guy. And so I don't like that. The hair's a little like clown goofy a little bit. Like it's a little too like pointed up and like doofball looking a little bit. Like it's a little weird, you know, like I could see how they're maybe going for like eerie and unsettling, but it kind of just feels a little like, I would have preferred the hair to be a bit more of like the slicked back variety, and I wanted the eyes to be completely blacked out. And outside of that, like the overall look and facial features of the mask itself, I think are pretty good. So that's my take on that.
So clearly the CGI mask is terrible, and
yeah. I mean, that's an understatement.
that's really bad. One of the things you said is I didn't like how big the eye holes were. I kind of like the masks when we aren't able to see Michael's eyes, or they're hidden.
I don't want him to have any.
Well.
I don't want him to have any humanity in there, and I feel like this movie was maybe trying to do that. You know, like there's even the shot where like she hits him in the nads, and like you see his eyes kind of go bug eyed a little bit as a reaction, and it's like, I don't want that. You know, I don't want like the personification of Michael as like a guy. You know.
Exactly. And I mean the mask from the beginning of the film where he's chasing Nurse Marion, that is said to be the same one from Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers. So that if you look at those two masks, those are either
really?
very similar or the same mask.
Okay.
I don't know how confirmed that is, but that is the story on the beginning.
I don't have much of an issue with the Halloween 6 mask.
No, not at all. And I mean, I liked that mask, but when it comes to like us ranking the masks, like I would put like the Halloween H2O masks in like a collective bundle, and they would be at the bottom of my ranking for where we have so far.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd put it. I don't know if, because even the problems I have with it, I don't know if it makes it worse than some of the other masks. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, like maybe, but it's like, it's one of those things where I also maybe need to come to grips with the fact that I'm not nearly as sort of direly invested in the specifics of the mask as maybe some segments of the fan base are, where they're like I've seen people be like, if the mask doesn't look right, the movie's not good. It's like, geesh, like I get wanting the mask to look right, but it's like the mask looks different in like every damn movie. Like, are we like, when you've got 7, 10, 8 different options, like how are we like splitting hairs over like how the crucialness of the mask? It's like the movie itself is much more important than the fine details of if the mask is third or fourth on the list of 10. I don't know.
And I agree with you. I'm not gonna base a movie off of the mask. And I like Halloween 4 a lot, and I'm not a big fan of that mask. But I mean, I guess you kind of did make a better point. Like there are some masks, like the mask at the beginning, for the first like 10 or 15 minutes that he's wearing, that is supposedly the same mask as the Halloween Curse of Michael Myers mask. I do like that mask more than the Halloween 4 mask, but like then the bug-eyed like mask that he wears for most of the film, like I'm not a big fan of that, just because the eyes are so wide and you can see
Mm-hmm.
his eyes. So like I guess it would have to be like a full on discussion of how we feel about every individual mask. So I mean,
Yeah.
as a collective, the masks in this aren't the greatest, but there are ones that are better than others. I'll just say that.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and like the faux, like I do think the faux pas of like showing his eyes like that. I'm like that. Like I don't think there is a Michael Myers mask that should do that, in my opinion. But
I don't think we see his eyes in the original until she takes his mask off.
yeah,
And that's it.
yeah,
I like that. I like that portrayal and like persona of Michael, where like he says the blackest eyes, and when we look at that mask, all we
yeah,
see is white.
yeah. The blackest eyes, the devil's eyes, and then in every scene he has, every close up he has in here, you just see his like blue eyes. Like,
Exactly.
sheesh. Yeah. That's unfortunate.
So that is all I have on the masks. Just do a quick rundown on every episode and chat with you about the mask. But would you like to go into our Halloween H2O versus Friday the 13th, the New Blood conversation?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it's a hot take, but like I think H2O is better than the New Blood. Like I don't know.
I'm still battling with myself. Is that
Yeah.
bad? I don't.
Well, and my whole thing is this. It's like, like the New Blood is when you not only are like zombie Jason, that's a leap for the franchise in part 6. But then part 7 goes further and is like now he's fighting a psychic. Not just a psychic, she's got telekinesis. She could move things and start fires and do this stuff. And it's like that's an inherently kind of like wonky late 80s concept for a slasher movie. And it's like, you think about like pluck these movies out of a hat and show them to a random friend or family member or coworker or something, and like how many eye rolls are you gonna get when like people like slowly realize like, oh, this is a movie about like a telekinetic girl who fights Jason? Like that's so weird and goofy, or dare I say dumb, versus like this, it's like it's a much more sort of like grounded, level-headed, sincere kind of a movie. Friday the 13th part 7 just feels like they're kind of at that point they're just kind of kicking the can around a little bit and throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. It's like, whereas H2O, it's like it's the sincere attempt to kind of like do a reboot and do a reset and kind of bring the franchise back to its core and like re-legitimize it in some way. So it's like this rehabilitating kind of a movie, and it's like trying to treat it kind of seriously. And then you have Friday the 13th part 7, which up to that point is arguably like the weirdest, goofiest, most outlandish one that only gets topped by the sequels that followed it.
Okay, so Chris is going Halloween H2O. Let me see what I can do here.
After I butchered it.
After you butchered it. So when it comes down to like, clearly I do like the comparisons. Like I will take Friday the 13th part 7 Jason over Halloween H2O Michael Myers. I will take Laurie Strode over Tina. The kills, That one's kind of tough for me because we don't get very many in Halloween H2O. And then in Friday the 13th Part 7, they're
You don't
just
see any of them.
right. They're all super censored. So that's almost like a wash. I think the score is better in Friday the 13th Part 7, even though it's a lot of like scores for that repeated scores from previous films. And like it's one of those things where it's like, is Halloween H2O a better movie and like a better made film? Yes. But do I enjoy watching Friday the 13th Part 7 more, and do I return to watching that one more than I do H2O? Yes. So
Yeah, you're making a great case there. I do respect that because it's like, yeah, how many times have I probably binged the Friday movies more than the Halloween movies? I'll concede that.
So it's just one of those things. Like I go off pure like, what do I watch more? What do I enjoy more? And like Halloween H2O is the better film. I am not denying that
Yeah,
whatsoever.
yeah.
And I like Michael Myers more than I like Jason historically. Like,
See, and I
yeah,
like Jason more than Michael generally.
see, Michael's my favorite slasher, but I enjoy the Friday films as a whole more. So even though Halloween H2O is the better film, I'm gonna give my nod to Friday the 13th
Yeah.
Part 7 because I enjoy it better and enjoy it like rewatching it
Yeah,
more as a
that's
film.
fair. That's fair. That's a defensible position, you know. Halloween H2O doesn't have any skinny dipping scenes, you know. You know, but I stand by it. I'm like in a must decide, like in a world where we're talking about like in a vacuum, like how do you decide? Like, is it like head to head? It's like, well, it's like H2O is just a more legitimate kind of a attempt at a movie, you know. Like, you know, that's just me. That's just me.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Is it a better?
Yeah.
It's probably a better sequel. And I mean, we get our
Now
better.
you say this, like, which is the more fun movie to break out at a party or to break out with like a gathering of like more than 3 people and have more fun watching? It's absolutely The New Blood. I'll concede that completely. But if we're just talking about like personal preference for like what's like a better experience, you know, it's like, well, Halloween H2O, you know, it's like it's got it going on as like a real like they're trying here, you know, not that Friday the 13th The New Blood wasn't trying, but you know what I'm saying.
And I'll say that I enjoy Michael Myers versus Laurie Strode the battle more than I do the Tina versus Jason battle.
That
Like
yeah, that's 100% true. Yep, yep, yep.
there's parts to each movie that I like more, but when it comes down to watching it, I think I've watched The New Blood. Say in the last 10 years, I've probably watched it on average like 4, 5, 6 times a year. And now
Mhm.
H2O, I probably have watched it maybe that many times in the last 10 years.
Fair, fair.
So I go back to what I watch more often and what I throw on when I want to enjoy a movie and just sit down in the background. Halloween H2O, better made movie, better sequel, but I enjoy Friday the 13th The New Blood a little bit more. So Friday the 13th takes the lead for me, 4-3. So
Mhm. Well, I've still got Friday the 13th 4-3 as well. So
all right, so we're here in the same boat. So after our head-to-head chats, we clearly Halloween H2O did have a sequel. It made a good amount of money, and that of course means we got to figure out a way to bring Michael Myers back, and they did.
yeah, perhaps the most uphill battle ever to try and figure out how to make a sequel to this.
After someone had got his head chopped off. How do we bring this guy back without making him like a crazy supernatural?
Yeah, that they apparently like embedded from the get-go. Like they kind of like had this workaround planned as early as when they were shooting this movie, which is kind of baffling.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly, again, this film did get a sequel. It was followed by Halloween Resurrection, released July 12th, 2002. And again, that was the first Halloween film that I had got to see in theaters. I went with my mom and my older sister, and that was a good time. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to our conversation on that and to see what your thoughts are on that, because that is definitely, I mean, not
A
a fan
controversial
favorite.
entry.
Yes, not
Yeah.
a fan
It
favorite by any means.
It is if you watch Halloween H2O and think, wow, this definitely has that 90s vibe of the post Scream era. If that feels overt to you, then Halloween Resurrection feels more 2002, feels 5 times as more 2002 than Halloween H2O feels like it's from the 90s. Like the early 2000s is just plastered all over Halloween Resurrection.
It absolutely is, and that's going to be a fun conversation because I'm sure we're going to bring up some stuff from our childhood and all types of things from them early 2000s, like some of the tropes they did in that film. So that should be fun.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of everything in Resurrection.
It absolutely does. So before we get out of here, I'll as always thank you, Chris, because Halloween H2O. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it on the rewatch, but I definitely did enjoy it. So thank you for joining me again, and I can't wait to get on to Resurrection.
Yeah, it was a fun little it was a fun trip down memory lane revisiting it. I think it's a fun experiment to maybe watch the original, then Halloween 2, and then go straight into H2O, as opposed to like, just to kind of see what that kind of like how that feels in terms of narrative. I can wait to talk about Halloween Resurrection, but we'll be here next week all the same.
I am just excited to hear your thoughts on it because, like I said,
I'm sure you're excited to hear my thoughts on it.
And then we get the fun of comparing Jason Takes Manhattan to Halloween Resurrection.
That's a doozy. But I think I mean, we'll talk about it, I suppose, but I think I know where I'm leaning on that one. I think.
Wait, you might have to rewatch both of them before the episode and see.
I might have to, and it'll be interesting to hear how I argue next week versus how I argued this week. Perhaps, I don't know.
It will be a fun conversation, and the comparisons have definitely been fun. So I'm absolutely glad that you mentioned that and brought that up to compare these two great horror franchises. So again, I want to say thank you for joining me. Thank anyone who's out there listening. We have Halloween Resurrection on our next episode, but until next time.
What do we do? What do we do?
Try to live.